And the very next day, land ho! And they saw it. A magnificent gem of an island sticking above the surface, going from horizon to horizon. Magnificent green gem of an island, its top swathed in cloud. And they named this after the new governor, Macquarie Island. But once again the weather turned, and it was 3 days before they could get a longboat ashore. But when they hauled that longboat up onto the pebbly beach, the sight that met their eyes, they didn't see what you and I could see. They didn't see this magnificent green gem of an island set amidst 10 million square miles of grey and white flecked ocean. No, they didn't see that. They saw wealth, they saw money, they saw riches beyond their wildest dreams. Why? Because they sighted the fur seals. Hundreds and hundreds of fur seals, every single pelt worth a guinea apiece, in London, Shanghai or New York. It struck El Dorado. They were going to be rich men. They'd never have to work again. They were millionaires. So they thought. The captain of the ship, Frederick Hasselberg, immediately thought to himself, we've got to keep the island secret. We've got to keep its location away from other people. If we can do that, we can keep taking off the seals for weeks, for months, for years. How can we keep it a secret? The crew would talk. But then again, it didn't matter. Because there were only 2 men on the ship who knew where the island was. And that was Frederick Hasselberg himself, as the master, and his first mate, a young 20-year-old called Miles Holding. So he said to one of his crew, Johnson, get Miles up here, I want to talk to him. Miles Holding bounces onto the poop deck. Hasselberg looks at him, he says, Miles, me boy, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to put you ashore here. I'll put off 6 good sailors with you. You can take some tripods and some barrel hoops and staves and some supplies, and you can take a longboat as well. And I'll be back about 6 months to pick you up. What do you think about that? What do you think he thought about it? He's going to be put on the island they just discovered. The ship was going to leave. It might never come back. But what could Miles Holding and the rest of the crew who were going to be put ashore do? They were under the command of a captain. And in those days, if you said no, it was mutiny. And mutiny was a hanging offence. So they went ashore. In the meantime, Miles Holding then, he'd gone ashore. Captain Hasselberg then gave the order to weigh anchor and they would sail back to Sydney. That's what they did. Now on Sydney South Head in those days, they used to keep a little contingent of soldiers, redcoats of the Argyle Regiment. Just a little band of 3 or 4 men. And the idea of these men wasn't to stop convicts escaping. They couldn't do that. The idea of these men was they'd rafted a cannon up to South Head. It was a signal cannon. And the idea of that cannon on South Head is that they could fire the cannon when they saw a ship out at sea. The cannon would be heard in Sydney town, and then from Sydney town they could use big semaphore arms, which they had at places like Top Ryde, to signal up right up to Parramatta, to let the governor know, Lachlan Macquarie, know that the ship was coming in, and if it was someone important, he could get in his gig, sail down the Parramatta River and meet with them. That was the idea. So months had gone by, and the Perseverance hadn't yet come back in. Now you can imagine these soldiers, they're bored silly all day, nothing to do. 3 or 4 of them are sitting down playing cards, looking at their hands. One of them says, "Looky here, Corporal, there be a sail. Give us that spyglass up." Aye, that's the Perseverance. All right, lads, man the cannon. So they start ramming wads of gunpowder down the muzzle of the cannon. They don't put a cannonball in because they're not going to shoot it. It might just make a lot of noise. They swing the tarred rope so she's glowing hot and touch it on the breech of the cannon. Boom! Off it goes, echoing in re-echoing across the harbour. Hundreds of sulphur-crested cockatoos rise into the air, shrieking in panic, and fly inland. In the meantime, the Perseverance is slowly coming into the harbour. The wind has dropped and the ship is making barely any headway. Sails slatting backwards and forwards, barely moving. The soldiers, of course, as I said, pretty bored. They walk along to the south head and they're looking down as the ship's coming in. They're talking among themselves. Looky there. There'll be Hasselberg himself on the wheel. Oh, that's unusual. You watch what they do. They'll go all the way up the harbour, catch as much wind as they can before they have to get the longboat out to haul away. The idea is once the sails go, the sailors have then got to tow the boat with the longboat. But that didn't happen. As the ship came in through the heads, they could hear the orders. Stand by to come about. And the ship slowly turned to port, slowly turned to the left, heading towards, I'm trying to think of the place where the restaurant is there. Anyway, they come around there. I'm having a serious moment, I'm forgetting the name of the place.
Watson's Bay.
No, not that far up. Watson's Bay. Watson's Bay, and then they hear the orders. Furl top, gallants and mains, let go the main bower. Splash, into the water goes the anchor. And the ship runs out on its anchor, it's swinging slowly. The soldiers are looking down. There's a flurry of activity going on down there. What's going on? They see a small boat called a pinnace lowered over the side of the boat. A young sailor clambers down into it, rows to the shore, gets to the sand, pulls the boat back, looks up. Yes, the high tide's not going to wash her away. And then he waves to the ship. The captain, wearing his great big Napoleon Bonaparte hat, goes in response. And then the young man ducks into the bush and starts running. Now, what was this the first Sydney to surf in reverse? No. What he had to do is run around through Vaucluse, Rose Bay and that area and beat the arrival of the ship to the port, which he did, because the ship now weighed anchor again and slowly came up the harbour. When they got to around Bradley's Head, the longboat was lowered and hove away, me laddies, and they're all rowing, and the boat's coming up. And the ship's gradually coming up the harbour. When they get to around about where Circular Quay is now, they drop anchor. They didn't go to Campbell Cove's wharf for some reason. They dropped anchor there. Now in those days there were no wharves at Circular Quay. It was just a mud flat. And of course, what had happened in the meantime, the man who had run around, he went into the first hotel, which would have been around where the quay is now, and he goes inside and he says to one of the sailors there, "You hear the Perseverance is back, matey?" The other sailor looks at him and says, "No." He said, "It is. The Perseverance is back. I heard tell that they lost Miles Holding, the first mate, and a third of the crew. Terrible voyage. They've really had a bad voyage." And he said, "Oh, that's no good, lad. You better have a rum." So he has a rum and he says, "Oh, thank you." But he didn't buy one back. He ducks out of the hotel and he goes up to another hotel up the street. And he says, "I've just heard down at the Bunch of Grapes, they're all talking about it. The Perseverance is back. Oh, they've had a bad voyage. Oh, no, not sickness. They lost the longboat. Third of the crew gone." That was the rumour that Hasselberg wanted to spread, you see. That was the reason why Miles Holding was missing. But actually put a sealing gang ashore with Miles Holding. Now, in Sydney town, in those days, there were very many shrewd business entrepreneurs. Mr. and Mrs. Reeby, Simeon Lord, Sam Terry, the Pipers, the Marsdens, the MacArthurs. They were everywhere. Fingers in every pie in the little place. But there were two brothers. And they've got a street named after them in Sydney even today. Any idea what it's called? It's near Bulletin Place. It's called Underwood Place. Ever seen it? Underwood Place, named after the brothers James and Joseph Underwood of the House of Underwood. They were the rivals. They were the opposition to Robert Campbell. They had their own ships, little ships. They were into sealing and whaling too. And they were very interested in what Campbell was doing. So the two brothers, James and Joseph, they're sitting there having breakfast. They've got these imported armchairs we've brought in from the UK, and they're sitting back. One of them said, "Jamie, me boy, have a look at this here Gazette." He throws across the newspaper of the day. They only had one, it was called the Sydney Gazette. "Look there on the back page." So he opens it up, looks on the back page. He said, "Look, read it out, read it out. There's no secrets in this house." So Jamie Underwood reads out what's on the back of the page. And it's an advertisement. It says, wanted, 10 to 12 able-bodied hands for a voyage to the South Seas. Apply Messrs. Campbell and Company. See what I mean there, Jamie boy? Here's this here Perseverance. She's only been back 10 days. 10 days. They've been up to the hunter. They're buying up barrel staves and hoops. The whole place is bought out of salt. Now they're advertising for a crew. I think they've discovered a good whaling ground somewhere. Or if not Wales, it'll be an island. They've discovered an island. I wonder where that island is. Now already were rumours circulating in a fabulous island had been discovered, named after the governor. But nobody knew where it was, except Captain Hasselberg. And he was keeping very quiet about it. So the two brothers thought to themselves, how can we find out where it is? We'll put out our own sailors, and they'll mix with the crew of the Perseverance, and maybe they can find out. But they couldn't. Eventually they came back, and the brothers are thinking to themselves, how can we find out? Maybe we could sneak on board and have a look at the ship's log. No, he wouldn't even put it in the log. A chart maybe? No. The only way we can find out is to find out what's in the head of Captain Hasselberg. He knows the latitude and longitude of this here island. And he's the only one on earth who knows where it is. How can we find out? And then they realised Frederick Hasselberg had one weakness. He loved his rum. He loved his rum, and he was always drunk. When he got to port, he would be in that hotel from 10 o'clock in the morning till it closed or they kicked him out. So the brothers thought to themselves, oh, he's been down the hotel. He's been down at the George since 10 o'clock. And here it is, 1:15 in the afternoon. He'll be rolling drunk. Now's the time to strike. So at around about 1:15, one of the swing doors of the big saloon bar was pushed open, and standing out in the bright sunlight was the portly figure of Joseph Underwood. He looks inside, trying to accustom his eyes to the gloom of the place inside. The place, of course, is filled with about 100 sailors. There's a noise of talking, clinking of glasses, and somebody's playing a harmonica. He looks inside and he says, and he sees near the door where they can catch the sea breeze, there's a great big cedar table, a huge oval table. And around it are seated the captains of industry in those days. the captains of industry, being, of course, the ship's masters, because they owned the ships, well, a big part of the ships they were on. So he looks inside and he sees Captain Hasselberg sitting there, and he says, "Freddie, me old mate, may I join ye?" And Hasselberg's pretty drunk, and he looks up and he says, "Joseph Underwood, you can do that. Sit in here next to me." Underwood says, No, I won't sit down. And the captain looks at him and he says, "We're a bit light on drinks here, mate. Would you like to get a shout in? Some drink, get us some rum." So Joseph Underwood takes a look at him and he says, "All right." So he goes across to the bar and he talks to the bartender. He comes back from the bar and he hasn't got one glass of rum for the captain. He hasn't got one bottle for the table. He's got a whole big earthenware jug in a basket, a whole gallon of drum, and he bangs it down on the table, and with a loud voice he says, "There are, lads, the drinks are on me." You can imagine what those words meant. The drinks are on me. There's 100 sailors in the place. They were all thinking, "Ooh." The noise level went down. When the noise level went down, Joseph Underwood leaned forward, he picked up the jug and he said, on second thoughts, lads, maybe somebody else can pay for these here drinks." And the big groan goes up. We knew he wouldn't shout. He wouldn't spend that much money. But he puts the jug back on the table. By now the whole place is silent. And that's all he wanted. He wanted total silence before he could say the next words. And when the place was absolutely quiet, he says, "Frederick Hasselberg, me old mate, I understand you and your crew have discovered an island." Hasselberg looks at him, doesn't say anything. And Joseph Underwood says, "Don't you worry about that, Freddie. I already know where it is." Hasselberg looks at him and he's thinking, he's bluffing. And he says, "In a pig's eye you do, lad." He said, "I do, and I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it." But then he changed tack completely, just like the ship coming through the heads had done a hard left. He changes the subject. He said, "Gentlemen, would it be fair to say, as I stand here next to this big ear table, I'd be looking at some of the finest seafaring men this side of Madras, wouldn't I?" And they say, "Aye, of course." He says, "And as I look around this table, I can see that there's not one man, not one here, who can't plot a course on this here watery globe. You're all ship's masters, seamen. Is that right?" "Aye." That's what I thought. And he said, "There's no Royal Navy men here, is there?" "Royal Navy men? What's that got to do with it?" He said, "No. Because all you men here, you are entrepreneurs, you are merchant seamen. And as merchant seamen, being entrepreneurs, you're men who'll take a risk, right?" And the voice pipes up, "Aye, we could lose a ship any time we go out." Exactly. Now what I want to do is this. I want to put a little proposal to you, gentlemen, and here it is. I know where this here island is, but I'd like to give you the opportunity of finding out where it is. So I propose a little bet, and here it is. And then he signalled to another fellow who he planted there earlier on. And he says, Henry Cable, that's his name. If you see his name, if you go out to Windsor on a big anchor, Henry Cable. Henry Cable was the right-hand man of the Underwoods, you see. He built their ships for them. He said, "Henry, come on over here to the bar with me." So Henry and Joseph, once again, they go to the bar. When they come back, they've got these slates in their hands. Each slate's about so big. "All right, lads. Now, Henry, you go around larboard side, give them my slate to all of those men around here, and I'll do it on this side." So they hand out the slates to each of the captains. and the first mates. And he says, right, now here's the bet, lads. I know the latitude and longitude of this here island. What I want you to do is place your guesses of where you think the island is on your slates. Keep it a secret from one another. And then we'll go round the room, and the man who gets closest to with his guess, well, he gets these. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out 8 gleaming golden sovereigns. That was a lot of money in those days. In those days they were using Spanish doubloons and holy dollars and IOUs. This was real money. He banged it down on the table and he said, here's the bet, lads. The man who gets closest to, he gets those golden guineas. And the man who gets furthest away, well, he can shout the whole bar around the drinks. The great roar goes up from the sailors and they're all crowded around the table. The atmosphere's electric. Around the table are the ship's officers. All right, lads, write your guesses now. And the captains start writing their guesses of where the island is. After a while, the writing stops. It doesn't go unnoticed by Joseph Underwood that the captain is also, in his drunkenness, writing something on his slate. After they've stopped, Joseph Underwood takes charge. He says, gentlemen, Captain Chase, you've been down to the pack ice a few times in your ship, the George. Where do you reckon this here island is? Captain Chase stands up. He says, gentlemen, I would suggest it would be about 62 degrees south by 173 degrees east. You're wrong. You're wrong there. What you got there, Lieutenant? And as he's going around, he notices that Hasselberger's head has slumped down. He's written something. Moving like lightning, he pushes over to the captain, pushes his hands away, and he sees what he's written on the slate. And in his drunkenness, guess what he wrote on the slate? The only figures he could think of, they'd been burning a hole in his head for months. He wrote, any navigators here? This is what he wrote. 54x159. 54x159. In this part of the world, the southern hemisphere, that can only mean one thing. 54 degrees south by 159 degrees east. It was the exact position they'd found when they sighted the island about 20 miles off the coast. And Underwood had spotted what he'd written. Hasselberg knew it. He tried to put his arms over it, but it was too late. By now, of course, the captain's sitting either side her, glaring down, trying to memorise the figures. So easy to do. So easy to do. Now the secret was out. Of course, Hasselberg, his face was white. Underwood looks at him, he says, Freddie, me boy, these be your golden guineas. Take them. And he pushed the gold across because he knew that the captain was greedy man. He was hoping to get that money without giving anything away. Too late. The secret was out. Now Hasselberg looked at him. Joseph Underwood said, ha, 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 Freddie, these be your gold. And he pushed out through those swing doors laughing. And he was still laughing when one of their own ships, a schooner called the Elizabeth and Mary, came back from Macquarie Island with 1,700 fur skins or furs aboard. That was a lot of money in those days. And it was just the beginning. Now the secret was out. They came from Hobart Town. They came from London. They came from New Bedford. They came from Nantucket. All over the world they swarmed like hungry wolves upon that island. And within 3 years, all the fur seals were gone. And after the fur seals, they started in on the elephant seals. Because the elephant seals, about a third of their weight is pure blubber, which could be melted down. And they used the oil for that to light the lamps of places like Invercargill in New Zealand. For 100 years they exploited that island. After the elephant seals had been nearly decimated, they started in on the penguins. Now, I want you to realise these aren't like your little fairy penguins. These stand this high. Huge penguins, royals and kings. And so they started in, they put big digesters and factories ashore, and gradually they diminished until eventually, in about 1910, our own Douglas Mawson landed on Macquarie to put up a radio mast. He was back a few years later and he noticed how quickly the wildlife was disappearing. Then began a war of words between Mawson and the businessman, a Scottish-born New Zealander. But eventually, Macquarie Island was declared a wildlife sanctuary. And I can tell you, I was there for a whole year myself, back in 1977. And I stood on a beach as big as Bondi, in amongst 500,000 penguins. It's unbelievable. Well, it is believable. I hope you believe it. Anyway, way down south, below the roaring 40s, in that belt of latitudes known as the Furious 50s, where the wind howls out of the southwest across 10,000 miles of pack ice. There is an island which has existed for millions of years, and an island I hope that will go on for a wildlife sanctuary long after our mortal bones have crumbled to dust. Thank you. Thanks very much for that.